Hold on. Before you scroll past, this island once sent a king to China. A real king, with an entourage of hundreds of people. And the king literally died there, waiting for the Chinese emperor to give him a title. That actually happened, on a little Philippine island most people have never heard of. And that's just the warm-up. Okay, so most people, when they hear Basilan, they immediately think one thing: danger zone, terrorist stronghold. And yeah, okay, that's part of the story. But here's what nobody tells you. This island has a history so deep, so wild, so absolutely insane, that the danger is literally the least interesting thing about it. And I am going to prove that to you right now. Here's what you're going to know by the end of this video. You'll know why this island's very name comes from warriors pointing at it and saying, "the Iron Way." You'll know about a secret kingdom that sent tribute to the Ming Dynasty. You'll know about pirate treasure. Literal, buried treasure, hidden by Japanese soldiers in World War II. And you'll understand why a tiny island, barely the size of Los Angeles, has been fought over by everyone. The Tausugs, the Spanish, the Dutch, the Americans, Al-Qaeda, and now the Philippine government. Buckle up. This is the island of Basilan. So let's go all the way back, like way back, before the Spanish, before the Sultans, before anyone called it Basilan. This island had many names. The Yakan people, the original inhabitants, called it Ulayan, Matanggol, and Pugulangan, which literally means island of forests. Beautiful name, right? Other traders from the mainland called it Tagima, and before you ask, yes, that name is on real historical maps. One of the first maps ever made of the Philippines, a woodblock print by Italian cartographer Giacomo Gastaldi in 1548, has this island labeled Tagima, as in, cartographers in Europe knew this island existed before most people in the world had any idea the Philippines was even a thing. Now, who were the people who actually lived here? Meet the Yakans. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the history books, for a long time, got this completely wrong. Most people assumed the Yakans came from Indonesian Dayaks, like they just hopped over from Borneo or something. But modern anthropological and archaeological research actually flips that on its head. The Yakans, and the indigenous Filipinos as a whole, appear to trace their ancestry from the north, not from Indonesia. Their lineage runs back to ancient migrations from southern China, through Taiwan, then south through the Philippine archipelago around 5000 BCE. Okay, this is the part that blew my mind when I first read it. So, the Yakans had a kingdom, an actual kingdom, called the Kingdom of Kumalarang, named after a river whose Yakan name Kumalang literally means to sing. And this singing kingdom was significant enough that it shows up, are you ready for this, in the imperial archives of Ming Dynasty China. Like, Chinese emperors were keeping notes on this little island in the southern Philippines in the 13th and 14th centuries. The collected statutes of the Ming Dynasty record a Chinese Mandarin official named Zhang Jian being sent to Kumalarang in 1419, and he stayed for 2 years. But wait, it gets better. So Zhang Jian, the Chinese official, is like, yo, this place is legit, and he convinces the Yakan prince, Ipentun, yes, that's actually his name, to travel all the way to China to ask the emperor for an official title. And Ipentun goes for it. He sails to Beijing with his family and hundreds of followers. The Chinese emperor eventually grants him the title of Wang, meaning king. But here's the gut punch. Ipentun died in Fujian, China, in May 1421, on the very docks where he was about to board the ship to go home. He never made it back. His son Lapi was proclaimed king instead, sailed home, and then, this is so Philippine history, basically faded from the records entirely. Alright, so here's one of my favorite trivia facts about this island. The name Basilan, where did it come from? Some historians believe it comes from the Tausug word basih-lan, meaning magnetic iron. See, this island had iron ore, good iron ore, the kind warriors wanted for swords and blades. So Tausug traders from Sulu would come here specifically to buy iron. And the story goes, and this is legitimately documented, that when the Spanish caught some Tausug warriors in one of their raids near Zamboanga, the Spanish soldiers were amazed at the quality of the swords and blades these warriors carried. They asked, "Where do these weapons come from?" And the warriors pointed across the water, toward the island, and said, "Ha Basilan," which means, roughly, the Iron Way. And the Spanish cartographers wrote it down, and it stuck, forever. Okay, real quick, I gotta ask you guys something because I'm genuinely curious. Drop in the comments, did you know the Philippines had kingdoms paying tribute to Chinese emperors? Like, did that surprise you? I had no idea until I went deep on Basilan's history. Let me know below. I read every comment. Alright, back to it. So meanwhile, while the Yakans were doing their quiet kingdom thing inland, a new power was rising right next door, the Sulu Sultanate. These guys were serious. I mean, serious. The Tausugs who sailed under the Sultanate were some of the most feared maritime warriors in Southeast Asia. They raided Spanish settlements all the way up to Luzon. Like, they didn't just raid the neighborhood, they went up the entire Philippine archipelago for generations. And Basilan? Basilan became their forward operating base. The port of Maluso on Basilan's southwest coast was their jump-off point for raids on Zamboanga. Now, here come the Spanish, and you gotta understand, the Spanish came to the Philippines in the mid-1500s with a plan. They'd already conquered the Aztecs and the Incas. They'd already built massive empires in the Americas. They figured, how hard could it be to control some islands in Southeast Asia? Well, Basilan humbled them. The island was formally colonized by Spain as early as 1636, but colonized is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, because the Spanish spent the next 250 years in a constant back-and-forth struggle with the Tausug, the Yakans, and the Sultanate. They didn't fully pacify the island until 1886. Oh, and I promised you treasure. Let's talk about that. The Spanish Pigafetta expedition, the one that survived Magellan's death, they passed through the Basilan area in 1521 and found precious pearls in a group of islets west of the main island. The Spanish named them the Isletas de Perlas, the Pearl Islets. These waters were legendary for pearl diving. And then, World War II. Japanese forces occupied Basilan in 1942, and when they were retreating in 1945 as American and Filipino forces pushed them back, there are persistent local stories, still talked about today, of Japanese soldiers burying gold bars and treasures among the remote, uninhabited islets of Basilan. The island even has an official nickname, the Treasure Islands of the Southern Seas. That's literally in its provincial anthem. Fast forward through centuries of Spanish struggle. The Americans show up after winning the Spanish-American War in 1898, and they bring with them a very different playbook. Instead of religious missions, the Americans bring rubber, massive rubber plantations, copra plantations, large-scale industrial agriculture that transformed entire sections of Basilan's landscape. And, because colonial history is nothing if not consistent, they brought in laborers from the Visayas and Luzon, which further complicated the island's already complex ethnic and cultural landscape. All right, I need to take a break from all the wars and colonizers for a second to just tell you about the Yakans, because these people are remarkable. And honestly, they don't get nearly enough credit. The Yakans are the indigenous heart of Basilan. They're inland people, farmers, deeply spiritual, and they produce some of the most intricate and beautiful textile weaving in all of Southeast Asia. Their woven cloth, using a backstrap loom, features these absolutely mind-bending geometric patterns that take weeks to complete. UNESCO has recognized Yakan weaving as a significant intangible cultural heritage. These patterns aren't just decoration. Each design is essentially a coded language of identity, status, and ancestral connection. Now, here's something most people totally miss about Basilan. Islam has been here a long time. We're talking 10th to 13th century, centuries before the Spanish ever showed up. Muslim merchants and missionaries traveled these seas following ancient trade routes from Arabia, through India, through the Malay world, and into the Sulu Archipelago. Some of the Tagimaha, the island's earliest recorded people, were among the very first adopters of Islam in the entire Philippines. So when the Spanish showed up calling the Muslim locals Moros, their word for the North African Muslims who'd ruled Spain for 800 years, it actually kind of made sense from their perspective. They were literally refighting the same religious war they'd just won back home. They just hadn't crossed an ocean before to do it. Okay, now we have to talk about the elephant in the room. Or the tiger in the jungle, I guess. In the early 1990s, a group called the Abu Sayyaf emerged in the Sulu Archipelago. They split from the Moro National Liberation Front, which was already a decades-old separatist movement, and they went in a much, much darker direction. The group quickly became known for kidnapping, ransom, bombings, and terrorism. The US government classified them as an Al-Qaeda-affiliated group. Basilan became their stronghold, and for a period in the late 1990s and early 2000s, the island had one of the highest levels of violent conflict in all of Southeast Asia. After September 11, 2001, the world's attention suddenly snapped to places like Basilan. The US military deployed troops to the Philippines as part of Operation Enduring Freedom, and Basilan was one of the primary areas of focus. American and Philippine forces worked together to systematically dismantle the Abu Sayyaf network. Roads were built, schools were funded, infrastructure went in. Residents of Basilan, who had lived through years of terror, said they finally felt something they hadn't felt in a long time: safe. And slowly, things began to change. Here's something that doesn't make the news much, but honestly deserves way more attention. In 2019, after decades of conflict, negotiation, failed peace deals, and lost lives, the Bangsamoro Organic Law was ratified. Basilan became part of the new Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, BARM. This was a major political step. For the first time, the Muslim-majority populations of the southern Philippines had a recognized autonomous region with real governing power. It doesn't mean everything is fixed, it's not, but it represents one of the most significant peace agreements in Philippine modern history, and Basilan is right at the center of it. So what is Basilan like today? Well, here's the thing that will genuinely surprise you. Basilan is actually one of the most equitably distributed provinces in the entire Philippines in terms of wealth. Like, their Gini coefficient, which measures economic inequality, is 0.2826. That's better than Pampanga, better than Batangas, better than a lot of provinces people think of as prosperous. The island has white sand beaches, waterfalls, one of the last large rubber plantations in the Philippines, and the Yakan are still there, still weaving, still farming, still holding on to traditions that go back thousands of years. So let's bring it all the way back around. Remember how we opened this? A king sailed to China and died on the docks before he could go home. That happened in 1421. 600 years later, his descendants are still on that island, still weaving, still farming, still holding on. They survived the Tausug, the Spanish, the Dutch, the Americans, the Japanese, the Abu Sayyaf. They've been pushed inland, had their name changed by colonial governments, been called Moros, been called rebels, been called terrorists. And they're still there. The Yakans, the people of Tagima, the people of the Island of Forests, the people of the Iron Way. They are still on that island, and in my opinion, that is the most remarkable thing about Basilan. If this video surprised you, and honestly, I hope it did, share it with someone who still thinks the Philippines is just beaches and Manila. Because there are places in this archipelago with stories so deep and so extraordinary that they deserve to be told. And Basilan is just one of them. Next up, we're going to a place that makes Basilan look like a quiet day at the spa. Stay tuned, subscribe, hit the bell. I'll see you in the next one.